everybody. Welcome back to episode 4 of Gays Anonymous. This is A for Anonymous. Although, I do think I will probably pretty soon express who I am. I'm hoping to, if you're in the Indianapolis area, I'm hoping to get into some festivals and get the podcast out there. And so, Indie Pride's coming up. Got the big gay market. I'm hoping to be there. So if you're in the area and are going to the big gay market, or you're going to Indie Pride, you'll most likely see me. I would love to chat with you. If I do end up getting a booth, which I'll know in a couple weeks here, feel free to stop by and say hello. I am going to have a box out there if this does happen, that will have an opportunity for people to put in questions, because no one's been giving me any questions, and I feel like it's because it's not truly anonymous, and that's totally fair. But also, I want to hear from everybody related to previous podcasts, previous guests, if you had questions for them, comments, questions about something I said, comments about something I said, general questions about, really anything queer related. I'm happy to do my best to answer them. That's kind of why I created this, to just give an opportunity for our community to have another safe and inviting space, and I want to hear from you. So let me hear from you. And let me know, DM me on Instagram, Gays Anonymous Pod, or you can email if you'd like at gaysanonymous224@gmail.com. Okay. Or meet me at one of those festivals. Look out for me. If I'm there, you can submit it in the box. Okay. All right. The first question we have today: 3 pieces of advice you have for someone who's about to come out. Ooh, this one feels very loaded. I think with this one in particular, 3 things that come to mind to me are, they all start with S, which is interesting. So safety, support, and sanity. So safety, before you're coming out, is it a safe environment to come out in? Do you feel safe? Physically safe, emotionally safe? Are you safe to express that to the people that you're living with? Would it put you in danger, both physically or emotionally? Would it put you on the street, physically? Is it safe? And if it's not safe, I think I would urge you to think about, what that's going to look like for you, because I don't want anyone to feel like pressure or feeling that they have to come out to be their queerest self in an unsafe environment. You should never have to feel that way. There's also no pressure to come out. You decide when to do that for yourself. And that is primarily based on you being safe. So making sure that you're safe. I think the second thing is support. And I say that in sort of a broad spectrum of who is there for you in terms of friends, in terms of family, in terms of emotional support outside of those people. Do you have a therapist? Have you been to therapy before and think it would be a good idea to start up again? Do you have online or book type tools to help you out? Workbooks, things like that. And I say that because unfortunately not everybody is supportive. I think we've heard that from, our previous guest, and discussed that, family can be a really, really tricky, tough dynamic to experience, and you have to make sure that you've got some people in your corner. I think it's really, really easy to get into a really dark place when you've expressed something, people don't like it or don't agree with it, and you've got no one to talk to or express about that. Or in the case of our last guest, you're potentially living with the people that are expressing that. And so how do you still live in an environment, if that's what you choose, how do you still live in an environment where people don't respect your pronouns or who you love? or how you identify. That, to me, says then I need to seek outside support from different avenues. So other friends, other queer folks, community resources, groups, different agencies in your area, Trevor Project, like different spaces where you can still express and feel your truest self and not feel like there's a hesitation to do so or like a blockage. And so just making sure that you have the avenue, whatever that looks like for you, because that is up to you, whatever that looks like for you. So whatever that looks like, there is some sort of support network there. The third thing is sanity, and this kind of goes along with the second one, but making sure that you're taking care of yourself, like self-care. I know it's something that people throw around all the time. Self-care is like taking a bath, face mask, like sure, yes, but like self-care is like, are you emotionally, physically, spiritually doing okay? Are you caring for yourself? Are you getting out of the house if it's potentially an unsafe or unfulfilling environment? Are you seeing a counselor? Are you going to spaces that being queer is accepted and okay? Are you in a group that you can talk to people about your experiences or about the things that are making you upset? Caring for yourself. I think those are, so safety, support, and sanity, I think those are, like, if I had to give 3 pieces of advice to somebody, it would be that. And I think in the self-care comes that introspection, and something that we've talked about before in previous podcasts is, I think, kind of understanding or determining what it is you want that to look like, how you'd like to do it, and then what happens after. Those are really, really broad, big questions, and I think what I mean by the what happens after is, if things go well, awesome, this is what this looks like. If things don't go well, this is what this looks like. And that's keeping that support and sanity in check there, as well as safety. So I think there's a little bit of introspection, and that unfortunately coming out is not a easy process by any means, and I don't think it is something that many can just do and feel comfortable doing. So making sure that you're at least kind of mulling over or identifying some of these pieces before, to make sure that you're feeling safe, you're feeling cared for, and you're feeling supported. That's what I would say. Okay, next one here. Do you think gay people are stunted in dating and relationships because they don't get to start really doing it until later in life compared to straight people? Okay, I'm just going to admit, this is my second time attempting to record this podcast. I think when I saw this question, it really stumped me because I had a lot of ideas about it. And I don't think I really got to an answer, and I think that's still okay. I was also just having a bad mental health day, which if anybody out there is experiencing, feeling heartbreak, loss, sadness, just having a bad mental health day, I hear you, I'm with you. We'll get through it together. Take a deep breath, find your support system, talk to somebody, let them know. Because talking about relationships and queer relationships is hard, especially when you're not in a wonderful space with it to begin with. So I just want to preface this question by saying that, and then just by expressing to everybody that it's okay to have a bad day. And if you're having one today, I hope I'll make a giggle or laugh at some point in this, and then we can get back to finding joy and remembering that it'll pass. We'll be okay. So, do I think that gay people are stunted in dating and relationships? Well, this question does assume that people don't come out early, which isn't a fact for everybody. I know some people that have, and I know some people that haven't. Myself, I didn't come out until I was in college, which hilarious now that I think about it. We talked about red flags on Quick Fives and Yeesh. I was playing with like Home Depot tools and like actively woodworking in pictures that I have from kindergarten. So I don't think it's really surprised anybody. Also so weird, I would steal my parents let me do it, but I would steal my brother's boxers to wear when I was younger, which I thought was hilarious. To wear to Safari Sam's. Shout out to Safari Sam's if anyone gets that reference. But anyway, do I think gay people are stunted? I don't think so. I think it's more of people that are queer or people that are identifying in a different way in terms of their relationships later on in life. I think naturally you're expressing things, whether that's feelings, thoughts, experiences that you haven't before with people is kind of what we're assuming, right? So if you're not out, maybe you're dating men or women, non-binary people, who knows who you're dating before, but then you start dating, people that identify differently. And all of a sudden it feels a little bit different. Maybe it doesn't feel all that different at all. I think I'm talking very specifically about my experience, but I think, when I started dating people after coming out, it felt completely different. And I do feel like in some ways it felt new, and it felt new. And it's not like I hadn't experienced, long-term relationships previously, but I think the dynamics between at least like myself and dating somebody that identified as a woman and not having had really done that before, a lot of things felt very new and felt very different in terms of the dynamic. But I don't think it's necessarily the sense of stunted. I think it's almost the sense of newness, kind of like you're experiencing things maybe differently than you had before, or maybe a little bit deeper. And I think that kind of goes along with what people say when they come to talking about almost this like delayed, what do they call it? It's like a delayed, but when they talk about sort of like baby gays being delayed or stunted, I think it's really just the sense of like you haven't necessarily had this part of you expressed, and this part of you that is maybe a bit more open to different experiences and different emotions. Like I think you're just feeling things a bit more deeply. And I to be honest, this is coming from someone who's been in a relationship with a woman and was previously dating people who identified as men prior to that. And so I don't know what that looks like for somebody that identifies as bisexual or anything else, but I would be curious to hear what that felt like. But yeah, I can imagine that people who come out earlier in life that naturally will have potentially, it doesn't mean they did, but maybe have more experience. I wonder if they don't feel that as much as people who've come out maybe in their late to early 20s, 30s, 40s, and above. Because I wonder if they just, given the fact that they're had more time to date and have expressed themselves more openly earlier on, that they're able to maybe have that prior to, people that are coming out later. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's a really wonderful question, but I don't think it's stunted. I think it's feeling things a bit more deeply. Let's see. Queer people seem to have a much more direct and open view on sexual relationships than straight people do, often having many more sex partners or kinks or experiences than typical. I also see queer sexualization being highlighted a lot within the gay representation I see. I also see queer sexualization being highlighted a lot within the gay representation I see. In some ways it feels liberating, and in some ways it feels like it's oppressive or unhealthy. Do you think this is a good thing or a bad thing? I don't see people having a more direct or open view on sexual relationships as a bad thing. I also don't see people having more sexual partners, kinks, experiences as a bad thing. There is a underlying tone of this that feels a little bit, again, I think we're assuming a lot in this question, so I just want to kind of highlight the fact that this is talking about a very specific, potentially queer person, right? This could also be a straight person that has had a lot of, maybe a very open view on sex and has many sexual partners and has kinks and has had many experiences. I think this isn't just a queer experience, and I want to just outright kind of express that. I think whoever you are, if you have an open view on sexual relationships, you have more partners, you have kinks, you have experiences, more power to you. I don't think that is a good or a bad thing. I think that is whatever you make of that. If that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do. I think the thing that comes to mind to me is, I think in general, at least from my experience, queer people seemingly are more open in terms of the sexual experiences, relationships they have, being more open to different things, maybe being more involved in, kinks or in that community. Because I think in general, if you're queer, you're kind of a more open person in terms of the ways that you express yourself. And so I think that kind of naturally, not for everybody, but I think naturally opens itself up to like, we explore things, and we're thinking about sexual relationships, we're thinking about our identities, we're thinking about, all these different aspects of what make up ourselves and our queer selves. And I think that kind of generally opens ourselves up to just being a bit more open to discussing these things, talking about these things, maybe exploring them. But yeah, I don't think that's a bad thing. And I think I think this could be straight people, this could be queer people, this could be anybody. I think the other thing about this is, I think it does feel liberating in some ways, and I think the unhealthy aspect of this would be if people aren't doing this consensually, right? If this is a dangerous thing that people are doing. But from what I understand of, BDSM communities and kink communities, that is some of the most safe and consensual people out there. And I think openness breeds safety in these spaces. Because if you're willing to communicate and talk openly about these things, then one, everyone is going to be a lot more comfortable with what's going on, but two, you're communicating about it, and so that everybody is open to it, everybody is willing, everyone wants to do it. And to me, that's what would make it good or bad, right? Not the fact that people are just more open or more accepting or more kinky than other people. Okay, I think I'll end it with that. But it's a really interesting and good question. I just think it's something that I think there are a lot of biases and a lot of assumptions in discussion related to like the openness of the queer community and then kinks and sexual relationships, because I also think that like a lot of queer people want to be monogamous, and a lot of people maybe have never had their first kiss or have had one sexual partner in their entire lives, and that's not bad either. That's, again, you do what you want to do when it comes to your body, you. So I think let's kind of, pause and reflect and see, in these types of questions, and, are we coming into these areas, or are we coming into discussions of queerness as like a one-size-fits-all? Because it doesn't. But I appreciate you asking this question, very much so. Okay. Next question is it important for me to disclose that I am bisexual when entering a new relationship? This is an interesting question, and I'm going to speak from my specific experience. As someone who initially came out as bisexual and then proceeded to come out kind of again as pansexual and then now identify as a lesbian, I think this feels like a question that only you can answer, because I don't think it's necessarily necessary. In that, I think when you're starting to date somebody, you're dating a person. Whether you want to disclose your sexuality to them is completely up to you. Again, I think that just comes to like the safety piece, your sanity, right, and that support piece. It comes back to those three pieces of advice, I think. Asking yourself, is it important for me to let this person know that I'm bisexual? Is it important? Do you want to? Okay, then do it. If it's something that you feel like you want to express because you have to make sure that the other person is, comfortable with it or acknowledges your sexuality, I think hopefully we're going on dates with people that do feel comfortable with that because it's a part of your identity. And if that's not the case, then I don't think it's necessarily the fact that you should or shouldn't tell them. I think it's the fact that you should or shouldn't be going on a date with them. But that's maybe something to reflect on. But I think with this is entering a new relationship, I would hope that you'd have or have discussed your sexualities prior to entering a relationship. If you're talking about entering kind of into dates to then be entering into a relationship, then I understand that there might be some hesitation in the beginning. who has been on a date with a queer person and not had their sexuality or something come up about being LGBTQ plus? I would love to know, because I swear that comes up. Zodiac signs usually. Sorry, I'm a lesbian. It happened. Like, probably a joke about tops and bottoms, but like not being very serious. Sorry, family. But I mean, those types of things come up usually on dates, at least for myself. And so I think as someone who previously identified as bisexual, when I was entering into relationships, and by relationships I mean going on dates with people, I would tell them. I told them. I also felt comfortable telling them, and probably would have removed myself had they not felt comfortable immediately. Because again, I think that's just an identity, that's a part of yourself. If they want to have more conversations about it, then I think that's a wonderful kind of learning opportunity and time to discuss. And I think if they have a problem with it, then that's when it becomes a question of, is this the right person for me? Should I be going on dates with this person? Do I feel safe? But I think when you disclose that is your choice. I said a lot of things there. I hope that made sense. So this next question is, what's a struggle that gay people have that you think straight people have no clue about? This is a really wonderful question. I'm sure there are a lot of them. And just off the top of my head, I'm sure a lot of people can identify with like a lot of different things about gender, feels like things that maybe straight people would really have no clue about. And I say that as somebody who's non-binary and thinks of gender probably more than your average person. Yeah, when it comes to gender and sexuality, I think too maybe I wonder if they understand like how deeply that is just like part of you and how much that affects different aspects of your life. I almost wonder. Yeah, I don't know. I think maybe I think straight people just don't understand the queer experience, because I want to say that in a broad sense because I think it is so broad. I think it is so different for everybody. And so I wonder, I don't imagine straight people think about gender very often or have feelings of anxiety come up when they can't put their correct pronouns on an email or don't feel comfortable doing that, or can't express their gender identity on a legal document, right, or a piece of paper, or don't have a license that accurately reflects how the person identifies. It just isn't a part of their everyday, but queer experiences are just that. I think it's an everyday thing. I don't think as a queer person there's ever a time or place that like something that has to do with my queerness, because my queerness is me. And so I don't think there is many things that I don't attribute to there being, whether that's like feelings or like it's related to queerness, because I think that's just like who we are as people. I don't know if that makes any sense. And I think that could be probably articulated very differently and a lot better than that. But I just wonder, because I'm just thinking like, how many times does a straight person walk into a bar and feel like I'm unsafe in this environment, or this is not the space for me because of XYZ? I think too there is also, in some of these questions I feel like I've answered today kind of express this too, is there's almost this sense of, I think, a lot of assumption, right? Assuming that every queer person is the same. And so I feel like there's a lot of assumptions that queer people have to kind of push back on that straight people wouldn't have to, right? So things like talking about that question earlier of like all queers being super open and kinky and having lots of sexual experiences. Like that is not everybody's experience. And I wonder if that's something that straight people have to like actively push against in terms of like an assumption about the group that you belong into, because I don't think anybody's like, oh yeah, straight people are just the kinkiest people in the world, and like have to kind of fight against that. Like I know that there are ways in which our society deems people to be more sexually active, but it just doesn't necessarily feel the same. I don't think. I think there's added layers there of a lot of assumption. So I would say those things. to me, feel like things that maybe straight people, I don't know if they have no clue about it, but I would imagine that they don't have to think about it as much as the average queer person does, because it only really applies to queer people. Okay, family members probably turn this off now, unless you want to hear me talk about queer sex. So this next question is, queer sex is not included in sex ed hardly at all, but especially if you went to a private school. What are a few things that you wish you knew about queer sex that is different than heterosex? Oh, dear Lord. For everybody's sake and the sake of people that I've been with previously in the past, I'm going to keep this pretty general, because this is not about me expressing all of that to strangers on the internet, although I appreciate you guys listening. I think I wish I would have known... Well, one, I think sex education in our country it's awful. It's really terrible. No one learns about sex through slideshows of really, like, late 70s pictures of gonorrhea. And that's what we had. Or, like, embarrassing somebody to have to go up and put a condom on a banana. Like, that still actually happens. Like, it is insane to me that actually happens still. And so, one, I think we need to redo everything. Because I think we can actually talk to people about sex in a way that is white men, like, centuries ago being like, we gotta just tell them bare minimum, you know, and there we go, we've done it, you know, our hands are off, or abstinence only. Oh my goodness. So many thoughts about that. I think when it comes to queer sex specifically, I think what I would have liked to have known, oh goodness, I think I would have just liked to have known more about what sex, like, actually is. Like, I feel like we get taught a lot about, obviously, like, physical body parts and, told about our genitalia and about, you know, don't get pregnant, or this is what happens when you become pregnant. And then you watch a movie of a lady literally having a baby in front of you, and you're like, yes, that is... No one's connecting the dots. No one's actually figuring things out, and then people actually do end up getting, you know, STDs and things because we don't really actually get taught. I'd say in terms of safety, like, make sure you're getting tested. Make sure you're upfront and communicative about getting tested if you're sleeping with multiple people or have multiple partners, or you're in a new relationship. I think those are completely fair and open questions to ask. I think as far as queer sex, I think it's wonderful. And I just like any other sexual experience, I think it can be really awesome and fun and open and new and explorative when you communicate, when you are consenting, when you're comfortable with the person. There's not a whole lot of specific things I wish I would have known, because I think it is something that is so vulnerable and so awesome to get to explore with another person. So I think this question to me in general just makes me think a bit more broadly, because I think we don't talk enough about sex in general and, like, how impactful and vulnerable that is, and how impactful it is in the entirety of a relationship. And so, again, I know, honestly, at this point, my bio should be like, communicate. But I do think it is so, so important to be communicating with your partner. And I think that openness that we talked about earlier with the other question, like, just being open with your partner. What do you like? What do you not like? Expressing that, saying that, checking in with each other. Again, consent. Oh, man, I could go off on sex ed in our country. Oh, my goodness. It is wild to me that we think that that's the best way to express and explain what we're doing with our bodies, what could happen. Like, why are we using scare tactics? It's not a scary thing, and it shouldn't be scary. And I think our society and our country has done a lot of things also recently to make pregnancy scary. And so I just think, as far as, you know, coming up from having that really terrible sex ed experience and that still being the case, I think I would also just urge you to honestly go to online. I'd be happy to link some better websites or forums or places where people have had really genuine conversations about queer sex, consent, pregnancy, fertility, things of that nature, because I think all of these things are so important just to know and have a basic understanding of, and our country doesn't even do. And then add in the queer experience. So I think there's definitely a lot of different resources that you can go to and get, and I would recommend doing that and not letting a very broken system try to teach you about that. It's also so not okay, or so okay that you don't know a whole lot. I think that's one of the beauties of sexual relationships, is getting to determine and do that together. It's such a vulnerable thing that you get to experience and do with another person, and so try your best to be open to that and be vulnerable in that and grow together. And not everyone's going to be great at it at first. Maybe some people are. Good for you. Very cool. But it's going to take time. It's going to feeling comfortable. It's going to take vulnerability. It's going to take feeling safe in a lot of ways to get there. And I think if you're having trouble with that too, like I say a lot as well, communicate, but also seek support, whether that's with a therapist or somebody that you can confide in and just talk about these experiences with, because I'm sure if you're thinking about it, somebody else has either experienced it, whether that's online or, a friend of yours, or, maybe a general sense of something that a therapist could help you out with if you're having other troubles related to sex or sexual relationships or being queer and having sex, because there's a lot that goes into that. So I think that's it for now, my friends. Thank you for listening to this episode of Gays Anonymous. I appreciate your support, continued loyalty, and sticking around to listen to these episodes. It's a really fun experience to be able to chat, whether it's just by myself or with other, folks in the community. And I hope I get to see you guys soon in person. Please share it with your friends, share it with your grandma, share it with your cousin, maybe an uncle, if you got a cool uncle. Or maybe the not cool uncle. Maybe just send him spam emails of my podcast to be look at this gay content. Yeah, I don't know. Share it however you will. Okay. Bye.